Number 15. The Prejudice of Roald Dahl. Get ready everyone, because we're about to reveal something about a most beloved children's author. Roald Dahl is world famous for his child-friendly and mildly unconventional stories for underage crowds. He has written famous books such as The BFG, James and the Giant Peach, and most famous of all, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Despite being an important children's author, Dahl also had personal views we today would find revolting. Dahl sparked controversy in 1983 after he told a journalist he held sympathies towards the Axis powers. He stated Germany had a reason for taking the lives of 6 million Jewish people shortly before his passing in 1990. He denounced Israel and made several horrible remarks. It should also be noted several of Dahl's books portray certain cultures in an unflattering light. For example, it is often overlooked the Oompa Loompas in the book version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are from Africa, which can become uncomfortable knowing how they have willingly become subservients of a rich entrepreneur, doing his will upon request. This led to the film adaptation changing the Oompa Loompas into orange-faced and green-haired short people instead, in order to steer away from this controversy. Number 14. The True Disney Tales. Disney has adapted many fairy tales for the big screen, starting with Snow White in 1937. This is a trend that has continued today, adapting others from Cinderella, Pocahontas, etc. Of course, the Disney Corporation needed to make major rewrites in order to make the stories child-friendly and with happy endings. Much of the stories adapted were from the famous Brothers Grimm tales, which are indeed grim in detail. For example, the original Snow White has the prince taking advantage of Snow White's deep sleep by sleeping with her and even having several children with her before she even wakes. In Cinderella, the executives thought it was best to omit the fact the stepsisters removed their toes in order for their feet to fit the glass slipper. Furthermore, the story of Pocahontas is drastically rewritten. In real life, Pocahontas was forcefully brought back to Britain in order for Rolfe to present the royalty the idea of the civilized savage, thus gaining royal investment in Jamestown, Virginia. She passed away at age 21, never returning home. The list is endless, but it is fair to say Disney had good reason for changing the story in order to make family-friendly films. Number 13. The Fall of Anakin. It's no secret people were severely disappointed with the Star Wars prequel trilogy, whether it be due to the storyline or the acting or Jar Jar. People have found something to complain about. The Phantom Menace has by far suffered the most criticism for not meeting expectations and relying too highly on computer effects. Young actor Jake Lloyd starred as the young Anakin Skywalker, the boy who would go on to become Darth Vader. What should have been a breakout role turned out to be a nightmare. After Lloyd suffered harsh criticism and bullying due to his participation in the film, this proved to be too much, and Lloyd decided to retire from acting in 2001 since the bullying from his classmates had become unbearable. He continued to make appearances at conventions, but told a reporter he did everything he could to prevent himself from being recognized on the street. Due to the backlash, things took a rather sad turn when Lloyd was taken into custody in 2015 for reckless driving and resisting arrest. A year into his sentence, Lloyd was transferred to a psychiatric facility. Lloyd's mother also confirmed he was very aggressive towards her during an episode when he fell off his meds. However, when speaking to media about his transfer, she has reported Lloyd's mental health has improved significantly as a result of treatment, and the two maintain a close relationship. Lloyd's ordeal shows how difficult an actor's life can be away from the cameras, as everyone suffers from their own demons. Number 12. The Struggle of the Blue Ranger. Power Rangers was one of the major franchises during the 90s. While dated today, the show still holds nostalgic value with people, and its campy 90s style still captured people's hearts. One particular favorite was actor David Yost, who played Billy Cranston or the Blue Ranger between 1993 and 1996. Initially, he stated he left the role due to a pay dispute, but in 2010, he came clean to the actual reason he left the series. Yost claims he was subject to ridicule because he was gay, which was still seen as taboo back in the early to mid 90s. Yost stated he was constantly called names on set to his face, and production crew would constantly question the other cast members if they were concerned about David. The torment led him into a deep depression and contemplation of taking his own life, which eventually made him decide to leave the show late into the 4th season. Horrified from the ordeal, he attempted conversion therapy, but this only resulted in a mental breakdown in psychiatric care. After a trip to Mexico, he came to terms with and accepted his orientation. The writers during Yost's tenure on the show have maintained Yost left due to insignificant pay, but have refused to elaborate further. It's sad to discover when a production sees conflict over such issues, especially when the tormentors resort to childish behavior. Number 11. Pee-wee gets busted. Pee-wee Herman is a popular character created and performed by Paul Reubens since 1977. Pee-wee was also the main character in several on-screen portrayals, famously Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985 and the children's television show Pee-wee's Playhouse between 1986 and 1991. Things took a drastic turn when Reubens was arrested in 1991. Detectives visiting a theater spotted Reubens conducting an act considered indecent exposure. Reubens and Pee-wee became subject of ridicule from the public, and reruns of Pee-wee's Playhouse were cancelled in wake of the scandal. However, Reubens managed to maintain a large amount of support from fellow celebrities and fans. By the time of the 1991 MTV Music Awards, Reubens appeared on stage as Pee-wee, sending the audience into a roar of applause and cheers. For the remaining decade, the scandal died down until Reubens was back in the police spotlight in 2002. Reubens pled guilty to a charge by police and was forced to register as an offender for a short time. Since then, Reubens has kept a mildly low profile, conducting voice acting in cartoons and video games. Number 10. Products of their time. It's common for people to go back and watch the films and TV shows from their childhood. It doesn't matter how young the target audience, adults can have a flood of nostalgia upon watching one of their favorite children's shows. However, as we grow up and mature, we can start seeing various adult-orientated jokes and caricatures far beyond the realm of political correctness. Cartoons from the 40s through the 70s and even 80s have depicted stereotypes of many different groups. A great example is from the Tom and Jerry cartoons with the character Mammy Two Shoes. In every way, shape, and form, Mammy Two Shoes is made up of stereotypes. For one, she is a housemaid in a wealthy home, and secondly, she speaks in greatly exaggerated lingo. She was written out of the cartoons after 1952's push-button Kitty. MGM Studios even created a censored version of the shorts featuring her, replacing her with a different woman instead. However, the release of Tom and Jerry on Netflix maintains Mammy Two Shoes as she was, with a disclaimer at the beginning of certain episodes, warning of the stereotypes portrayed in the films, and also defending their decision to keep them, by explaining by removing them would deny such prejudices exist. Warner Brothers also didn't steer clear of stereotyping, especially during the 1940s. In several Bugs Bunny cartoons, Japanese are portrayed as buck-toothed simpletons, which is enough to make any person cringe. These cartoons come to show how different attitudes were back then, and how it was acceptable to portray such stereotypes, with how much things have changed in the latter half of the 20th century. There is no way such portrayals would even get to the drawing board today. Number 9. Ferris Bueller's Dark Knight. The 1980s saw a cultural phenomenon with the release of several teen comedies. Arguably the most beloved of them is 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Star Matthew Broderick became an overnight sensation, and the film continues to have massive popularity today. However, Broderick has a dark secret not so many people know about. On August 5th, 1987, Broderick was driving through Northern Ireland with Ferris Bueller co-star and then girlfriend Jennifer Grey when he crossed into the opposing lane and then into another vehicle. Occupants Anna Gallagher and Margaret Daugherty passed instantly. Broderick maintains he has no memory of the event and doesn't know why he went into the opposite lane. Authorities in Northern Ireland brought charges and he was facing 5 years locked up. However, he made a plea deal to a lesser charge of careless driving and only had to pay a $175 fine. This immediately caused outcry in Northern Ireland, especially from family member Martin. He called Broderick's verdict a travesty of justice. Well, Broderick certainly under no circumstances meant to cause this to happen. It is hard to not understand Martin's pain over the slap on the wrist punishment. Martin later came to terms with the event and forgave Broderick, and the two even planned to meet in 2003. However, as of this video, the meeting hasn't taken place. Number 8. The Monster of the BBC. In the United Kingdom, Top of the Pops was a phenomenon for its run from 1964 to 2006. Of all the presenters the show had, none was as famous as Jimmy Savile. For 20 years, the eccentric man hosted alongside several people until he finally retired from the role in 1984. Jimmy was known for his sense of humor and bizarre behavior. He was also active in charity, running several marathons and collecting donations for children's hospitals across the country. When he passed away in 2011, fans from around the world flocked to give their respect to the late host. However, not long after his passing, tons of allegations flooded police and media. There were reports during his lifetime, but these were widely dismissed due to lack of evidence. Now, there were hundreds of accusations against him, and mounting evidence of a cover-up conducted by the BBC and others. The Metropolitan Police Service launched an official investigation the year following his passing and came to the frightening number of 589 allegations of his frightening actions. It was also found that he used his high status in the BBC to aid him in finding new people, with members of the BBC shutting down any accusations against him. These people even included children and teens recovering in hospitals he had funded. Jimmy had gone from eccentric Superman to the most prolific serial offenders in British history in a very short amount of time. Number 7. Flipper. At a simple glance, dolphins look like the happiest animals on Earth. Not only do they naturally have a grin, but they also appear to have fun jumping out of the water and playing with bubble rings. Sadly, dolphins in captivity are known to suffer greatly. Richard O'Barry is a former dolphin trainer turned activist who helped capture and train the 5 dolphins who portrayed Flipper in the original 1960s television series. O'Barry became fond of his dolphins, in particular one named Kathy. He knew she wasn't happy and was suffering in captivity, but he did his best to take care of her. According to O'Barry, he was comforting her one day when she took a breath and never took another one. Surprised, O'Barry eventually let her go and she sank to the bottom of the tank, never to resurface. To this day, O'Barry is certain Kathy took her own life, tired of being away from the sea. Unlike humans and other animals, dolphins are conscious air breathers, meaning every breath they make requires conscious effort. Therefore, it appears Kathy purposefully did not take another breath, knowing the consequences of doing so. The experience greatly affected O'Barry, and he turned his back on the profession and turned to activism in preserving the global dolphin population. Number 6. Jeffrey Jones' dirty hard drive. Most can be forgiven for not knowing who Jeffrey Jones is simply by name, but the moment you see his photo, it's guaranteed many of you will know who he is. He is probably best known for playing the principal Edward Mooney in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, as well as Charles Dietz in Beetlejuice. In 2002, Jones fell headfirst into hot water when it was discovered Jones had a collection of photos involving children and had attempted to solicit photos from a 14-year-old boy. He was taken into custody and pled no contest. He received 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, and had to register as an offender. 2 years after this happened, Jones was locked up for failing to register his offender status in Florida, and again in 2010 in California for the same reason. Since then, Jones has kept a low profile and appears to be following the conditions of his sentence. He has also made public appearances without incident, signing autographs, and even appearing with co-star Winona Ryder during a 2011 Tim Burton exhibit. Number 5. Judy from Family Matters. This popular family sitcom lasting 9 years and 9 seasons between 1989 and 1998. Even those who weren't fans of the show will know the character Steve Urkel, the nerdy neighbor of the Winslow family. The character of Judy Winslow lasted 4 seasons and was played by Jamie Foxworth. However, at the end of the show's 4th season, the production's budget was cut, leaving the writers and crew with major decisions to make. Having decided Judy made little contribution to the show, she was written out, with Foxworth being let go from the series. To add insult to injury, the further seasons never explained her sudden departure, and instead moved on as if she never existed at all. Foxworth found the search for acting work difficult, and she was unable to find a steady job. As a way to find work, she began taking jobs in the adult movie industry under the name Crave. She worked in that industry for a couple years before leaving, and it wasn't public knowledge until 2000. Afterwards, she spiraled into depression. She later appeared on Celebrity Rehab in 2008, and became fully committed to going clean after finding out she was pregnant. Today, she is completely clean and a devoted mother to her son. She is working on her memoirs describing her struggles, and it appears she is now in a good place. Number 4. The Not So Wonderful Oz. If there is an example of a timeless classic, The Wizard of Oz is definitely a frontrunner. However, despite the bright world portrayed, the set was a completely different story. In short, production was a nightmare and went through 2 directors in a matter of weeks. Furthermore, the Munchkin cast were treated rather poorly, especially in terms of pay. In the 1989 book, The Munchkins of Oz, author Stephen Cox reveals the Munchkins' pay was $50 per week, which today equates to $900. Meanwhile, Toto and her handler earned upwards of $125 per week, which is about $2,100 today. Imagine being told you were being paid less than a dog for your work. However, on the other side, ex-husband of the late Judy Garland claimed in his memoir, the actors who played the Munchkins made Garland's life miserable. Of course, there is also the famous urban legend of a Munchkin seen hanging in one of the scenes, but this has been denied by the surviving cast and crew. For such a child-friendly film, it's horrible to hear about the alleged happenings that went on around set. It comes to prove how difficult the production world is from the world in which the story takes place. Number 3. Humpty Dumpty's Fall. We all know the story. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. He had a fall. The king's horses and men's couldn't put him back together again. The rhyme has been around for centuries, and even portrayed in picture books and films. In both contemporary and modern depictions, Humpty Dumpty is an anthropomorphic egg, hence why he breaks so easily upon falling. He is also portrayed as such in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, where he educates Alice on the subject of semantics. Going a step further, Humpty Dumpty has been used by teachers and professors to explain the second law of thermodynamics. So what's the big surprise with this entry? Well, it will come as a surprise to tell you, in the original rhyme, Humpty Dumpty was not an Eggman. In fact, in real life it wasn't even a living thing at all. The truth is, there is evidence to suggest Humpty Dumpty was in fact a cannon. According to the Colchester Tourist Board, Humpty Dumpty was a large cannon which once rested on the walls of the Church of St. Mary at the Wall. As the story goes, parliamentarians damaged the wall beneath Humpty Dumpty during the siege of 1648, sending it plunging to the ground. Due to the weight of the cannon, The royalists were unable to lift it back up, and it was effectively out of commission. While not proven, the story does have merit. First off, the royalists supported the king, thus being depicted as all the king's men. Second, the rhyme never gives Humpty Dumpty a description, let alone identifying it as an Eggman, or even a human. This is an example of how things can change over time, as generation after generation interprets writings of all forms. Number 2. Those we've lost and sadly forgotten. It's hard to imagine there are stars out there we love, but we do not know their names, and worse, so we're unaware they passed away. The first example is of Judith Barcy, initially appearing in commercials. Barcy later appeared in television shows and films, including guest roles on Punky Brewster and Cheers. Her most famous role was the voice of Ducky in The Land Before Time, and Anne-Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Sadly, her career was cut short. Barcy's father was a drinker and would become severely angry. After Barcy's mother began divorce proceedings against her husband, he reached his breaking point and took the lives of his wife and child before taking his own. The cast and crew of Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven were devastated, especially considering the fact Barcy was only 10 years old when it happened. Both films were released after her passing, and were both dedicated in her memory. The actor who portrayed the child Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a double whammy. Surprisingly, at the time of his portrayal in the movie, he was 18 years old, but anyone would be forgiven for believing otherwise. Evans was born with dwarfism and only grew to 3 feet 2 inches tall. On August 5, 2002, Evans was rushed to the hospital, suffering from complications related to a heart condition. During an operation to correct the problem, he passed away. Strangely, his character for the soap opera, Passions, passed away on the show the exact same day. The last one we will talk about is the Canadian children's show Caillou. The titular character was voiced by actress Jacqueline Linetsky from 2000 to 2003. Her time on the show was cut short after her and her mom lost control of their van and ran into a semi-truck. Both Linetsky and her mother passed instantly. She was only 17 years old. There are plenty more people we can discuss, but this should give you an idea of the things we are unaware of, even though these individuals were part of famous films from our childhood. Before we get to number 1, my name is Chills and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you're curious about what I look like in real life, then go to my Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT and tap that follow button to find out. I'm currently doing a super poll on my Instagram. If you believe ghosts are real, then go to my most recent photo and tap the like button. If you don't, DM me saying why. When you're done, come right back to this video to find out the number 1 entry. Also, follow me on Twitter at YTChills because that's where I post video updates. It's a proven fact that generosity makes you a happier person, so if you're generous enough to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it, then thank you. This way you'll be notified of the new videos we upload every Tuesday and Saturday. Number 1. Walt Disney's facade. The man is truly a legend. Walt Disney created the most popular and beloved children's entertainment the world has ever seen. Today, the name Disney is synonymous with happiness and fun. Despite his achievement and innovation in animation, Disney can't be considered a saint. While not fully proven, there have been rumors surrounding him claiming he was prejudiced towards Jewish people, which is hard to counter considering he attended meetings of the German-American Bund. He also hosted German filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, granting her a tour of Disneyland and the Disney Studios. Furthermore, it's hard to ignore the portrayals of ethnicities in his cartoons, specifically African Americans, and let's not get started on other ethnicities as we'll be here all day. Something particular that is hard for Disney supporters to deny or defend of Disney is his staunch views of women. Ward Kimball, an associate and friend of Disney, once said he didn't trust women or cats. The most damning evidence of Disney's unflattering view of women is a letter received by Mary Ford in 1938 after she applied for work at the Disney Studios. In short, it stated only young men work in the inking and painting department and no women are allowed to work there. Well, definitely a man of his time. As the saying goes, it is still horrible to see the sorts of views he had and allegedly had, considering he is the king of children's entertainment. However, he has long since passed, and his company has moved on, becoming more and more progressive as time goes on. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because we upload new countdowns every Tuesday and Saturday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of our other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy!